Good evening, everyone, and welcome to still another edition of Sportsline here on WFTV. Special night for us tonight. We have another special guest, and really excited about this one. For all you folks out there that really enjoy Justin Wilson, and you know who I'm talking about, you're really going to enjoy our guest tonight. He's the head coach of the Rider Raiders, Coach Wayne LeBleu, and without any further ado, Coach, welcome to the show, and congratulations on a successful outing last Friday night.
Well, thanks, Donnie. I appreciate that. I tell you, about halftime last Friday night, I wasn't sure I was going to want to be on this show Tuesday night, but things worked out, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're just tickled to death to have you. I want to remind you the numbers. You see them on your screen, 855-9039 and 855-5740 and 855-5742. We're ready for your calls, and whenever y'all are ready to pick up the phone, we'll dial those numbers, and we want to hear your questions. And I know Coach LeBleu told me he's excited about answering questions tonight. Coach, let me ask you something else about the game last night with not last night, but last Friday night with the Coyotes. Were you happy with the performance of your offense?
Well, I was, Donnie. We got off to a slow start, but it really wasn't. We weren't executing well. The Coyotes came out really fired up, and they were getting off blocks and running to the ball, and they denied us an opportunity to move the ball. And we didn't get many snaps in the first half, but I thought our offense played well. I thought we played well on both sides of the ball.
I do. I have to agree with you, too. And I think, of course, you talk about rivalries. We know what a big rivalry this thing is. It's gone on for years and years, and it's, I think, even probably grown more so now because the Coyotes are classified in 4A, and you guys are still in 5A. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with the attendance of the schools and the number of kids. Let me ask you this, too. Did you feel like your offensive line gave you what y'all expected, too?
Yeah, I thought they did, especially in the second half. I felt like we established a new line of scrimmage in the second half, about 3 or 4 yards up the field, and that helped our backs tremendously to be able to run the ball. But I thought they did a good job. We didn't have many mental breakdowns in their assignments, and they did a good job of getting on people. And you don't get them blocked every time. The Coyotes, I think, have a good football team. I think they're going to have a good season, and their guys got off blocks well, made some plays, so I was pleased with our offensive line play.
I figured you weren't, and of course you go back to the couple of scrimmages that you guys had. I know you weren't real pleased with some of the execution, and you said a lot of times when you made the big play, there was a penalty or a silly mistake, something like that hampered it and brought the play back. But I think, too, I've got to agree with you. Overall last week, and of course we did the football game, but I think the guys did a real good job. I was impressed with Mondrell Lewis. Everyone had told me how he had bulked up over the summer, and I tell you, I could see that. Rashad Hickman, too, looks a bit bigger than he did last year. And I think Ramon Flanagan ran the offense very well. And I think for being the first game and being the rivalry that it is, that the guys did a heck of a job.
Well, I appreciate that, and I was pleased, too. I felt like our kids worked real hard this summer. They showed up in good condition, and it paid off. It was a good win for us, and we were real excited about it.
Defensively, of course, we all know about Scott Saltzman. I mean, he's been in Dave Campbell's football, has picked as one of the super blue chippers this year. And, of course, you got the young sophomore. I think we touched on him, too, during our broadcast, John Kunkel. What did you think of John's performance as a sophomore? Now, keeping things in perspective, you can't compare a sophomore to a senior. But what did you think overall about the young sophomore's performance?
Well, I thought he played well as a sophomore. He made some mistakes, as you would expect a sophomore to do. But it was a big game, and you can imagine how nervous he was. But he got in there and battled it hard. He made some things happen, made some mistakes that he's going to learn from. But I told Coach Mancini after the ball game, I said, if you want to really appreciate how well John played, you need to go back to our '89 season and pull the first 2 or 3 games out and watch Scott as a sophomore, because he was that way too. It's just hard for a sophomore to get out there and play well without making any mistakes. He's real nervous. He's inexperienced, and even the big, strong ones struggle for a while.
Well, there's that first call. Before I ask you this question, let's go ahead and get to the phone. You're on Sportsline. Go ahead, please.
Donnie, I have a question for Coach LeBleu. I wonder what adjustments he's planning on making for this week against Hershey regarding their kickoff coverage. Is this just because of the first game of the season, or is he planning a different type of coverage for this second week of the season?
Well, that's a real good question. I'll tell you, we worked hard on our kickoff coverage this week. we did have some breakdowns in our kicking game that we were disappointed in. The first one, I believe this is what happened. On the first one, when they mishandled the ball, our guys broke in to go for the ball, and Ben popped out of the crowd with it, and he was off and running, and of course it scared us. You know, he nearly scored, and we were fortunate to get the turnover on that. And then I think after that, our guys were a little tentative coming down because of what happened on the first one. And late in the game, when we relaxed and came down, we got them on the 18-yard line, and that was encouraging because that was really the first time we did it well. But we worked awful hard. We've made a couple of adjustments, both in personnel and in our coverage part. So I think we'll be much better in the kicking game.
Donnie, thanks a lot. We're behind you 100%, Coach LeBleu.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Always like to, you always got coaches out there watching, don't you? Watching the
I think that was one of the Hershey coaches calling.
Watching the special teams. There's always somebody. There's always a quarterback up in the grandstand. There's always a bunch of them up there. Getting back to what we're talking about offensively and defensively, mention the linebackers for me again. I think we talked a little bit about that before we came on. Sean Perez, one of the linebackers, and kind of bring me up on the kids again.
Well, our strong side linebacker is DeKetrick Montgomery. DeKetrick's a junior, first year up on the varsity, and I thought he did a real good job the other night. He played well considering it was his first game. Sean is also a junior, but he's got a year starting experience behind him, and so we expect a little bit more out of him because he's been in those trenches for those 10 games. But he plays the quick side linebacker for us, and he runs through the ball well, makes some big plays for us. And so we think both of them can do a good job. Of course, Rashad Hickman has played linebacker for 2 years and is an excellent linebacker. We hope that those two guys will be able to keep Rashad on the sideline when we're on defense and let him rest because he's an excellent fullback, and we hope we don't have to play him so much at linebacker.
Corners and safeties. Now, I remember one of the safeties last year, if I'm not mistaken, Scott Avery was one of your safeties last year. And how do you stack up this year in the secondary at corner and safety?
Well, we made some changes. We had both of our cornerbacks coming back. Kevin Owens and Brian Lewis started at the corners for us last year, and so we knew we had some experience there. Scott Avery graduated, and you just can't replace a Scott Avery. You know, every year you have on your team some kid that you can't replace, and Scott Avery has been back there at free safety for 3 years for the Raiders, and we sure miss him. We moved Brian Lewis to the middle because he has quickness. He's an intelligent young man, and we think he's going to be a good free safety, but it's a new position to him.
Let's get this call. Well, I left us, it looks like. John Lewig, now was he back there also with Scott last year?
No, John played for us the year before.
Okay.
Last year,
We'll get this. Excuse me, Coach. You're on Sportsline. Go ahead.
Yes, Coach, I have a question for you. I'm just wondering what in the world you said to those boys during halftime, and if we could bottle that and sell it, we'd all probably make ourselves a lot of money because you certainly came back with a vengeance in that second half there. I'm just going to hang up and listen to you, and you did a great job, and good luck against Hershey.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I hate to tell this on myself because I've had a lot of people say, you know, you must have really said something inspiring to them at halftime. It was really very quiet in our locker room at halftime, and we just talked about the things that we didn't do that we should have been doing, and made very few adjustments. It was mostly just an emotional thing that we need to play with a little more intensity because the Coyotes were ready to play, but there wasn't a lot of screaming and hollering, and it was pretty calm, and I could look in those young men's eyes and tell that they were going to come out in the second half and be a different football team, and so we were just excited. We were ready to come out and play, and they did. I was real proud of them.
Did you see the seniors kind of take over too at halftime, Coach?
I really did. I'll tell you, our seniors have given us some good leadership, and they did. They didn't come in and get down on one another, or no one was putting the blame on anyone for what had happened. They just said, hey, we can represent ourselves better than that. We need to play better than that. Let's go out and get the job done. And, you know, that's what they did. They were pretty confident that they were going to play well in the second half, and so that made me confident that they would.
And sometimes it just takes a while to get started. When you've been looking in the newspapers for weeks, and you've been listening on television for weeks, and you listen to all these guys, the so-called experts, and they're going to predict the district championship, and they're going to tell you who's going to win and who's going to be in the playoffs. you can't help but hear those type of things. It's hard to block them out. It's hard to ignore it, and especially for the kids. You know, it's hard enough for us, and we're supposedly grown-ups, and it's a heck of a lot tougher on the kids. And so you hear all those things, but the main thing is you've got to come out and get it done on the football field. You got to put all those things aside, and I think a lot of that plays an important role too.
Well, I think so, and you're exactly right. It's real tough. I do believe that the underdog in the game has a little bit of an emotional advantage, and that is because they know they have to play harder, and the other guys still have it in their mind, as you said, well, we're going to be all right. And as you know, that it's still an emotional game. It's played with your heart, and the Cows came out with a lot of heart, and I tell you, they were tough to handle.
Anybody on their club, Coach? I know there have been quite a few. We had some calls last week about Ben White. I think Etoy Brigham was fairly new to a lot of people. Anybody that you might want to mention that you were impressed with in the ball game, as far as on their side of the line of scrimmage, that you may have been surprised?
Well, I was impressed with quite a few of the young men. Some of them made some big plays, and I thought did a good job. I thought Bowles kid played both ways and played well on both sides of the football. And you know, their linebackers ran to the ball well. I was impressed with them. I think they're going to be a good football team. I think they've got a good young quarterback. I think he was a little nervous, but I think he's going to make some things happen. And they've got 3 or 4 good running backs.
How do you see that race? And I know you're going to, of course, you're going to spend much more time in Class 5, 5A, and you've got to. I understand that. But how do you, just because these are 2 other city teams, and you got Hershey coming up this week, you played the Coyotes last week, they're in the same district. How do you see that?
I really can't answer that because I don't see that much of them. You know, I don't know that. I know Burke Burnett, Jerry's got a good football team there. I know that that's always a tight district also. They have some good teams in there, but I think definitely that the Coyotes and the Huskies are going to both be fighting for 2 of those playoff spots, and I hope to get them. I'm pulling for them.
Well, it'd be great if we had 3 teams in the playoffs. Had the Rider Raiders and the Hershey Huskies and the Coyotes.
I'd love to have it. I'd accept it tomorrow, I'll tell you.
How do you feel about the kicking game, Riders' kicking game now? Not only the punting, but placements as well. Are you pretty well pleased with the way things are progressing there? Just about the time I ask you a question to get a phone call. But that's
I think I was saved by the bell that time.
Go ahead, you're on Sportsline.
Yeah, Coach LeBleu, you going to throw the ball more this weekend?
Yeah, we throw it quite a bit, I'll tell you. People don't notice. We throw it back to Mundrell a whole bunch of times. We intend to throw it more. It was in our game plan to throw it more last week, and you know, sometimes things that happen in the game dictate what you're going to do. We didn't get many snaps in the first half, and the second half we came out to establish our running game and the line of scrimmage, and it was working so well with us we stayed with it. But our intentions are to throw the ball more, yes.
That's good. Thank you very much.
You don't have any idea who that was.
I think that was one of my receivers.
Oh, mercy. I asked you about the kicking game and how you felt about the placements and also about the punting game.
Well, I'll take the positive first.
All right.
Daniel Rodriguez kicks our extra points and field goals,